Hey, Chase. How are you, man?
Doing well.
It's good to hear. Wow. It's been quite a while since we've done this, huh?
Yes, it has. What an adventurous couple of weeks it's been.
Yeah, seriously. I feel like as we're transitioning to 2023, it's going to be a very interesting year.
I agree. So, first episode of the year 2023. What's going on, Brandon? What's on the menu for today?
Yes, so welcome everyone to our first podcast in the year 2023. For tonight's podcast, we're going to be doing, I guess, a mix of a political slash psychological analysis from the latest video of Actualize.org called Understanding the Liberal Mind. And so I had took some notes. I really doubt in this hour here that we'll be covering all the bullet points, but we'll go through as much material as we can. I hope that we can get participation from the audience, so that we could have a discussion regarding the liberal mind. I know in our last podcast, which was about the understanding the conservative mind, I believe it was Dio. Is that his name? Dio?
Geo.
Yeah, Geo that had joined the room, and we had a great discussion from him. It seemed like he was leaning more towards the conservative side, which is fine. And maybe we may get someone that is on the liberal side. We can have a conversation with them. But if not, we will cover these bullet points here. Oh, hello. Hello, Heron. If you'd like to... Hey, Chase, can you make me... can you mod me? Cool. Thank you. Yeah, Aaron, if you would like to come up to or listen on this podcast, feel free, or you can just listen to us. So, first of all, let me ping the link to the description for the video. While I'm doing that, Chase, would you like to discuss any of your thoughts on the video that we watched? Because I know there was a lot to unpack. It was like as usual, a 3-hour video.
3 hours. I got about 2 hours in. I don't know if the last hour was worthwhile.
Okay. Well, and I did watch all 3 hours, so it may have been worthwhile. I don't know. Maybe not. I don't think I have. From the notes I took, I covered everything that was discussed, but let me see if I can.
So just keep in mind, I don't subscribe to this bipolarism in politics.
Yeah.
So he's kind of like drawing a line in the sand that shouldn't be there. That's what I think.
Yeah, I see. Okay, hold on. Link was pinned. There we go. Hello, Heron. Thank you for joining the stage.
I have no idea why I'm on the stage or whether I should even be on the stage. Sounds like you guys are doing a podcast or something.
Yes, this is the Dante and Virgil.
We're doing a podcast. You remember when we interviewed with you before?
Yeah.
A while ago.
Yeah.
So, we just
Well,
figured. Yeah,
I'm just not sure why I would be on the stage if you guys are doing a podcast.
Well, you've been on the stage for previous podcasts.
Oh, I just maybe didn't know that it was
Okay.
a podcast. I
it
just thought it
doesn't.
was
It
open to
doesn't
everyone.
matter. You're just, you're just recorded, and then and then once this recording's over, it'll be posted on, the internet. So it's all good. No pressure, right? So, it's, we're pretty lax as far as, these podcasts are concerned. I mean, um, you know, what's your take on liberalism in general, Heron? What do you know about it?
Well, I don't usually pay too much attention to. I mean, there are some obvious, conservatives and liberals, but I don't see much difference between either of them really.
Sure.
I'm kind of radical, I guess.
Radical in what way? What are your political
He's
views?
a radical centrist. I respect that.
No, I'm not a radical centrist. I'm a radical outsiderist.
Okay.
Radical
Yeah, I'm
nonist.
looking forward to the end of nation states, including the United States, and the beginning of a global civilization. That's decades away, though. So, but I think it's coming. I'm looking forward to the demise of nationalism.
Hmm. Interesting, Heron.
So,
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah,
Chase, go ahead.
Brandon, how, obviously the video is about liberalism and Leo talking about just different aspects of liberalism, but have you thought about anything in the video, like things Leo gets wrong about liberalism, or why it's not a good idea to label people as liberals?
Well, like I said, let me go through the notes that I have, and I can touch upon that right now. Actually, we can touch upon the first bullet point that I put out, which I don't even, and which I think is kind of, which if I bring it to note, I don't think it would be that much different for conservatives, but I'll bring it up here. So the first bullet, I mentioned something about so basically liberals apparently grow up in a more loving and favorable environment, so technically survival is easier for them. That's one point. That's at least one point that I remember watching from the video.
I can't say I agree,
Right.
because my parents grew up conservative, and conservative households turn out to be more wealthy. So I don't see how that relates to liberalism.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, it's kind of, I mean, I don't, because I know he tries to contrast it that, conservatives are supposed to, I think what he's trying to, like, as far as demographics are concerned, because he thinks that, conservatives are more in like the West or in rural areas, whereas, liberals tend to grow up more like in the suburbs and the cities, and maybe they have like parents that like are in a higher state of income or something like that. So that's what. But I don't know if any of that really, you know.
Yeah, I don't see that having much basis in reality, because aren't the conservatives supposed to be the wealthy ones who have like children who get the best parts of life? And then maybe it's just like the pendulum swinging, where those children will turn out to be more liberal and just like hate their parents and do crazy stuff. But the first point he makes, I don't see that sticking very well.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I got like 46 other points, so we can always touch upon more. But that was my first point. Do you have any notes you want to go over from when you watched the video?
Let me check.
Yeah,
He
let's just try to
said,
like go bounce
li-
back and forth, so I'm not just going through my list of bullet
so he
points.
said the liberal mind is more relaxed and lenient than the conservative mind.
All right. I think I have for the second point. Oh, let's touch upon your first point. I know you mentioned that they're more relaxed, but then again, but then there's also, and he did talk about that in the video too, about like the how reactive the social justice warriors are, SJW. Do you know anything about SJW? I'm curious, like, do you know the history of how that even started or where they came from?
Yeah, he was saying like to be a warrior is like what people were in the old days, and like to be a social justice warrior is like the most honorable thing you could be in today's modern world. But what Leo doesn't like, not Leo, but just like the way it's been turned out, that a social justice warrior today is just like the most memeified kind of silly thing. Well, we do live in a clown world, so I can see why it's like that.
Yeah, right. We do live in the clown world, and when it comes to the SJW, I don't know if it was like something that was started as like an idea from like the government or something like that, who is maybe it could have been as a form of brainwashing. I don't know. Because they do get they can get quite reactive, but it's just like you have to really wonder with some of these movements out there, what difference are they really making to society? You know what I mean? So I feel
Yeah.
like,
Who's
yeah, go ahead.
funding them? Like, where's the money coming from? And then where does money come from in general? Like,
All right, yep.
it
Hmm.
all comes down to banking and
Yeah,
how money is created and how, well, not even money, it's currency. Like, just, I have a lot to say about this, but that's because I've been editing a video, a really good one, about the banking system. So
yeah.
look forward to that coming out.
Yeah, I will definitely look forward to that. And perhaps maybe in a future podcast, we can cover more about it. I don't think did we actually cover in detail about the banking system
I don't know.
and how money
Maybe
works.
we covered it in like the second or fifth, no, sixth episode, something like that.
Okay. Well, we can always, touch upon it in more detail based on that video if we want to cover that
Yes, and I have a
as a.
question for you. So
Yeah, go ahead.
I got a comment on the most recent podcast,
Mm-hmm.
and the comment said, "What is this about?" So what do you think I should reply in to that guy who commented?
Are you referring to the one with Valis of Meles, the
Yeah,
math
just
video?
I got a random comment, like I guess someone scrolling through YouTube found the video and like wants to know what it's about. So, how would you describe the podcast?
Okay. Yeah, I guess it's okay. We can go on like a slight, tangent, considering how I would describe that podcast.
Not the
Um,
episode, just the podcast series as a whole.
right. So that's related to um, deriving mathematics platonically, or rather, which is why we really didn't cover that particular video as much. It was more of like us advertising, new calculus channel. Remember?
Right. But if someone finds the playlist for all the episodes and leaves a comment saying, "What is this about?" What should we say? Did I cut out at all?
No. I heard you said.
Okay.
I mean, well, the thing is,
So
like,
you would say
first of all, could the guy have been like a troll, or could he have
no.
been like legit? Like he just doesn't understand. Like,
Yeah, just curious. So,
okay,
like, I would say the Dante and Virgil Musings podcast is about blank.
oh, the pod. Oh, okay, you're talking about our podcast in
Right,
general.
right.
Right. So the Dante and Virgil Musings podcast, essentially is about the two of us. If our aliases, Dante and Virgil, covering a variety of different topics, whether it's related to philosophy, politics, psychology, and essentially bringing the public, awareness to discussions of topics that I don't know if most people would really talk about. So part of the reason that we're discussing actualize.org is for one, I know that this channel is quite popular, given the fact that there's the guy's got like 1 million subscribers, and I'm not like knocking Leo or anything, because I do think his intentions are good, with the work that he does. I just don't know, because of some of the points that he talks about in his videos, if it's actually making really like I guess the like it could be that he could be overhyped, or there's just some views that he has that may not necessarily um, help progress and the type of work that he thinks he's doing. Even though I commend him that he's able to support himself full time by creating videos, and that's great that he has a huge audience in doing so. But as I've been watching Leo, like over the years, and it's interesting, and that's also kind of why that we have these Socratic discussions, so that we look into for ourselves, is anything that Leo talks about actually correct or true? Because even Leo says to verify for ourselves if what he's talking about is the truth. And if it turns out it's not, or doesn't serve our own development, then it should be disregarded. So
That was fantastic.
yeah, great. So okay, should I go on to the next
Yes,
point?
please.
I think we touched upon this before, but yeah. So liberals are less. I think we may have talked about less reactive and sensitive to threats. I don't know if I agree with that point. What are your thoughts on that?
I can't really say that's more of a liberal or conservative thing. I guess overall the video is just Leo trying to define liberalism
Yeah,
in just
exactly.
however he sees the world.
Yeah, right. Based on his own experiences and interpretations of liberalism, and I'm sure he's done a lot of research and work into it. I just don't know, because I know it's mostly a psychological video. So it's now here there was this other point I mentioned. Okay, yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead, Steve.
so the liberal mind, first of all, the individual watching the video has to know what a liberal mind is. And then the whole video is just like reaffirming, or I guess skewing, the very specific aspects of what it means to be a liberal.
Right. Right. Exactly. That's correct. And sort of like in our podcast, we're just kind of going through the points, at least I wrote down, because again, he touched upon a lot of it, a lot of different points, and just discussing, does it have any basis in reality, or is it too, or maybe it's just too general. It's too general, and it's you can't. It's hard to like see. That's the thing. Since we're talking, it's interesting. On a slight tangent note, I want to ask you, Chase, a question. Do you think that, because again, everything that Leo talks about is related to, well, there's other topics, a lot of it's psychology. That's the whole point of why we're discussing, understanding liberal minds. We're talking, he's going into analysis on, the psychology of the liberal. And I feel like, it's very difficult to do, given the unique individuality of every person. I mean, how I don't know, when people watch these videos, um, if they may end up having a biased point of view. Maybe some of them might think that Leo is crazy. Um, do you think that when Leo goes into a lot of these, political videos, especially covering, like the psychological analysis of, conservatives or liberals, that, maybe it's not, like a direction that Leo should go as far as trying to get involved with, politics?
Oh yeah, definitely not. Like the only reason I think politics exists is because of the government. Like how can certain aspects of what the government does be divided only into two categories and then you have to pick one of those two categories? How does that make any sense?
Yeah, right, exactly. So, and even though Leo tries to go into detail about, conservatives and liberals, it's still just it's still way too general, because we know that because not everyone's gonna like fit into that category. You know what I mean? So, but let me see. And do you remember the bear example they talked about between liberals and conservatives?
Bear example? I don't recall.
Let's just talk about the bear example between liberals and conservatives.
Do you have anything written down there or no?
Yeah. Let me try. I'm gonna try to explain this sort of like in my own words. And again, this is completely generalizing, and it's probably, after I go over this discussion, at least according to what Leo would think about it, probably doesn't really make much sense. But if I remember correctly, as far as the conservative example had something to do with, because conservatives tend to be like more fearful, so they'd probably be more cautious, take a lot more precautions if they were like out in the woods or something. Whereas I don't know, if because remember, conservatives are like usually more cautious, and whereas like liberals, are not as risk averse, which again is generalizing, which is not really good to do. Um, so more than likely, if a liberal were to go out into like the woods, they might get like mauled by a bear more than likely than a conservative. Something ridiculous to that effect, if I recall. I don't know.
So, like, why is he just saying that all liberals have to be like weak?
Yeah, right. Because
All
it's
liberals are weak. All liberals are radical. Like,
I
it's so
mean, yeah, I
silly.
mean, it's generalizing a little bit too much, right? Even though, but
Yeah.
the other thing though is he also says that liberals, according to another model that he uses, because he appeals to those. Here's the other thing I know. Yeah, I have also noticed is I know that in prior videos, right, that Leo talks about that the highest authority, correct, is usually like yourself, if I recall, right? Something to do
Yeah,
with the
that's true.
individual.
Yes.
So, okay, so if we use that logic, okay, um, then then why would he try to appeal, liberals and conservatives, on the Carl Graves spiral dynamics model? Because he would say that conservatives are generally like in stage blue and yellow. Sorry, stage blue and orange, and liberals are more green and maybe like yellow or something to that effect. And I'm thinking, so, but he did. So I don't know how you're trying to what I'm saying is do these models that he refers to, are they really reliable as far as when it comes to trying to categorize the psychological profile and development of human beings? That's, I guess, even though if the individual is technically like sovereign and unique, I don't think it's as easy to categorize or to classify psychologically.
Oh yeah, definitely not.
Yeah,
So
right
if you're
there.
just saying that the liberal mind exists because the government exists, so it's just like which party do you want to join and have a fun time with? And then like why would you just make your whole identity around a political choice and just call yourself a liberal? Why don't you just be yourself?
There you go. Exactly. Or why do you have to? So the point I'm trying to make, and this is something I'm gonna have to actually tip my hat um, to John Gabriel on this, and I know because do you remember the video that you mentioned about like questioning if psychology was like a valid science?
I don't remember that.
Really? Okay.
I
Well,
don't
maybe
think
if you have,
psychology is a science. It's personal development.
yeah, because he would talk, yeah, because so I'm trying to remember, off the top of my head, John's like position on it. Well, first of all, like when it comes to science in general, as far as having to do with, and that's the other thing too. That's one thing I have to kind of question about Leo, is that a lot of his ideas, do when in the research that he does, does comes from, in some regard, I think, was it mainstream academia, and we both know like how corrupted that is, and how biased the research can be,
Yes,
which is not
indeed.
which is not good, because like if he's trying to take this research and then use that as like an appeal to authority, it doesn't really make his case very, I don't know, good, or at least aligned with reality, if that makes any sense. So, but yeah, getting back to what John Gabriel was talking about as far as him saying that that psychology is not a science, is simply because when it comes to human behavior, it's quite difficult to really quantify, even if you try to do it via even trying to do it via qualitative measure, at least from my point of view, given like the diversity of the individual diversity of all these different human beings. I mean, I know psychology, attempts to quantify human behavior, both also via quantitatively and qualitatively, but I don't know. I don't know how where that the type of research is going. Then again, if a lot of it is government funded, it kind of makes you wonder, what's really going on of what the government's trying to do as far as pulling all this psychological profiling research on society, and definitely within like social media.
Oh yeah, definitely agreed. I see psychology as, so I see everything in terms of 4D EDU, and psychology is on the mathematics spectrum. So psychology would be a mathematics that we haven't discovered yet.
You say that it's a mathematics that we have not discovered yet.
Yes.
Are you saying that psychology could be quantitatively measured? It's just that we don't know how to do it yet.
Well, I would say it's beyond measurement.
Yeah, right. Okay, sure.
So it's beyond the current way we comprehend mathematics now.
Yeah, okay.
Plus what I mean by mathematics now
Mm-hmm.
is John Gabriel's mathematics. Mathematics is more like mental skills than your own psychology.
Okay. Yeah, actually, I do remember reading a research paper by Donald Hoffman, and I recognized the mainstream math that they use, like with set theory and whatnot, and I'm pretty sure if I dug into it more and started questioning it, I am not really sure if this is, if the mathematics really, checks out as far as quantifying human behavior. But, a lot of academics seem to think it does, at least as a belief anyway. So, but let's see. Okay, so that was another bullet point. Do you have another bullet point to talk about?
Yeah, he mentioned the Myers-Briggs.
Yes. I think I had that somewhere as part of my notes. MBTI, something to do with judging and perceive. Very little notes, but if you took more notes, feel free to flesh
All right,
upon
so
that.
what I have here is that there's judging and perceiving, and
Yep.
he said judging is more conservative while liberal is more perceiving.
Yes. Now I remember.
And I think that's funny because I'm INTJ and you are INTP.
Correct. Exactly.
But you schedule the room, so you're acting more judgmental in that way by scheduling the room and being more structured.
Mm-hmm.
But then I convert the podcast into a video and upload them at the same time every week. So that's how I'm structured.
Correct. Yeah. So.
So as being a perceiver, what's it like being a liberal in Leo's mind?
Correct. You're right. Well, that's ironic because Leo is also pretty sure Leo is also INTP, like me. Even though I feel like I don't know, I think you are right that some of his points, is a little bit too broad in general. I guess which I think maybe, I don't know if it's a flaw in like INTPs, or I think. So when it comes to, okay, what would it be like being quote unquote liberal in Leo's view as far as INTP? I mean, well, I guess, we would be more quote unquote radically, open-minded to many different, paradigms and perceptions, which, is good and bad, because I do think that there needs to be structure. That's one of the things I can definitely appreciate about Platonism, right? Because that has a sensible structure of whether or not do your ideas make sense or not? Are these valid theories or not? Right? And it's kind of like, if they're not valid, one shouldn't really pay as much attention to them. They're kind of dead ends. And I think an INTP person per se, even if we're generalizing, would probably at times get stuck with contemplating or juggling around various paradigms, and having a difficult time making any kind of decisions of whether or not are they valid or not, or maybe there can be something useful to them, maybe there can be some other type of creative discovery that can be made, or maybe not, or maybe it's just like it's kind of a wild goose chase, because keep in mind, considering that Leo identifies himself mostly as a liberal, that some of his ideas that he has proposed on actualize.org, I don't really know if if a large demographic of people can honestly relate to. Especially when he talks about God and consciousness, and how other people can relate to God differently. Of course, there's some people that are atheists, and deny God, even though if they try to subscribe to science as like the truth or whatever, how can science be the truth if not everything can be necessarily quantitatively measured? You know what I mean? So plus it could also just be science itself could also be just a belief system. And so anyway, I could ramble on, but I think I'll land my plane there. How would you like to comment, Chase, on what I said?
Yeah, so I'm kind of following along what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's like what is the difference between a religion and an ideology? Because, liberalism is an
Correct.
ideology.
Yeah. It
But at
is.
what point is it becoming the religion of statism?
That's a very good question, because liberals, tend to subscribe to statism, and I question myself, honestly, if if liberalism and statism, is like a form of brainwashing, right? I mean, like, why why do we have to live the way that we've been living? in society. Even though, of course, I could, we can talk about that in this podcast freely, but things are, of course, the way they are. But I think it is kind of paradoxical because, okay, if the liberal mind is quote unquote about freedom and like all these choices, well, for one thing, why should they be limited to the choice of statism, right? Or the choice of thinking that like the government is going to provide all these amenities, right? And maybe even have like a blind optimism that the government is going to do good for society when there are examples out there of the contrary, right? So it's kind of, I don't know. I don't know. I feel like it's hard to really say when you try to tie in with liberals and statisms how by having like more government that you are free, right? So
Yes, and like he's saying that the liberal mind, I have this as the next point. He's saying that the liberal mind is more questioning of authority and hierarchy. He said it's more critical of the government and authority, and I'm just like, yeah, freaking right. There are liberals that are more anarchist, and there are liberals that are more statist.
right. So I don't. Yeah, that's okay. So here's the thing, like about that, and I know that Leo identifies as sort of as a liberal, but I know that in prior videos. Yeah, I think I do remember reading about that. I have a bullet point about the liberal mind as anti-government and authority, but I don't. I really don't. I'm really not so sure about that. To be very honest with you, given because I know because it's like okay, if liberals are like for the government, what about like that's the thing. Like as far as I know, like traditionally, right-wing politics, I know is less government intervention, right? And then like left-wing politics is providing more government. So I don't know when he says it's anti-government authority. It's like okay, but the other thing too is that I think because liberals tend to lack a lot of structure. If they are technically quote unquote, which I don't really agree, like anti-government, I mean, could they actually like take care of themselves? I mean, that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying, at least according to what Leo's point of view. I'm sure there are you can't really like make generalizations about like liberals being like liberal mind technically being anti-government authority when clearly I'm sure there are liberals who are for government and are for authority and want taxes to like go up because again where's the money going to come from? But then again government makes money go burn prints, so it's kind of like even if taxes are going up and the government prints money anyway,
Yeah, then what's the
it's a
purpose of
bit
taxes?
it's kind of it's really weird the way like money works and taxation and all that stuff. So and with and how the government gets its funding, whether it's through taxes and debt, and it's like a mess. And here's the other thing is that I don't know, maybe
And they can
go ahead.
send money to Ukraine. Like, what is that?
Right, yeah, they can send money to Ukraine, and again, I don't. I try not to follow. I mean, I try not to follow. A lot of the drama that's like going on with Ukraine. Even though I know from who knows what really. I mean, for what the media is portraying, it's like terrible and all these things. But then, I don't want to really get into why they're doing that per se. Why there's this war in Ukraine. I don't want to really get into the politics of it. So yeah, but then as far as sending money over there, yeah, I don't I don't know about that, to be honest with you. So, but um yeah, so I mean, technically, if you're like anti-government, why ask for the government to send money to another country? I don't know. So
Yeah, so there's liberals that are for the government, and they probably work for the government too. And then there's liberals that like, I don't know, they're anarchist, but they want the government to actually do something. In that case, I just think it's like a failure of imagination. Like they can't imagine a world without the government.
yes,
Yeah.
right, which kind of contradicts sort of like defining the liberal being sort of more about freedom, because in a way that they're kind of, they want like some kind of structure, even though if we try to question the government, it's it could arguably be a toxic form of structure, right?
Exactly.
Because you're appealing to, and you're kind of, yeah, you're basically sacrificing your freedom by appealing to the government, and you know and you're not really exercising individual sovereignty. So I don't know. It's yeah. And I have another point I guess I could bring up here. Even though it's too generalizing. Oh yeah, one of my points I put was something that had to do with like, you know, open to new ideas, cultures, people, systems, and ways of doing things. The only counter argument I could say about that is, then why the heck, you know, are you, if that's the case, that they're still supporting or thinking that government should be the way it is, and also in general, why would the liberals support the two-party system in general, which is created by the government, right? The whole two-party system.
I have no idea. Well, I think the banks want a two-party system, and
Oh
then
yeah, right. The banks. My point was, yes, the banks want to do that. What I'm saying is, if the liberal mind is supposed to be more open, right, than conservatives, why are they not expanding their minds or questioning the way government works, and why are they not considering alternative systems for humanity to live? Because we know that the government has a lot of problems. It's not really going to go away just by the social justice warriors, or like the whatever kind of protests that they're doing, because hey, the machine, the what's the saying, I mean, it's still, the system is still turning, because you still got people that still go to work, they're still going to these government jobs. They're still like, to me, a lot of these protests don't really from liberals really make as much like of a difference, unless you're actually impacting like the system directly. You know what I mean? So we just, yeah, you can protest, but it's not. I mean, is it really? It's not really shaking up like the system for government to be like, whoa, maybe we should like change things or be like crap, or but so I don't really know, you know. And then of course you have other some people that believe or think um that maybe government is sort of like a necessary evil, which again I question that too. I really do. I really do question if government should be like the end all be all. And I know that at the heart of it, liberalism, the left wing liberalism is in support of the government. So
I think the so-called liberals that Leo talks about are too intoxicated by sensationalism from media and other sources.
yeah, right, because they're like being bombarded with the media, like all the drama like associated with it, and then they're also demonizing um, conservatives, and it's like okay. But the thing, and again, one of the points mentioned before was open to new ideas, cultures, people, systems, and ways of doing things. But if that's the case, then why would they you know get so triggered and pissed off about other viewpoints, other ways of life? You know what I mean? Like, because they're acting like they're acting like they're putting themselves like on a high horse, that they know how people should be or how these systems should work. But it's complicated. You know what I mean? And so I don't really know. Like that would be my counter argument on why in some cases I don't think liberals necessarily are more like developed than conservatives if they're going to react in that way. Whereas I think conservatives could definitely be more developed, especially if they're aligned with natural law, or they're aligned more with nature, and they're able to create sensible structures to live in harmony. Whereas like yeah, go ahead, Chase.
Yeah, 100% agreed.
So
That's all I wanted to say.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, but then again, I also understand, that there's, I mean, but other than like trying to talk about like liberal versus conservative, we're really just talking about like issues of like psychology and just how like in human development.
Yes, like what guides the mind towards being more conservative or liberal, but then again, it's all just happening because the government exists. And
Yeah,
the flashy stuff on the TV and the stories, you get so wrapped up in them that you just end up picking a side and you don't even know that it wasn't you in the first place, but you just associate yourself with this idea.
correct. And again, yeah, I like to give the audience a word of caution as far as what, where, and how you consume the type of media. It doesn't matter what it is, whether it's books, movies, YouTube, you know all that has an influence on you, and a lot of and the government knows this, and somehow given their influence with a lot of these mega corporations out there, I feel like it's like all just like one giant like human psychological experiment. At least that's how I kind of view. I mean, because
I've been
there
seeing
is
a lot of comments on YouTube that mention that, like, they're just saying, "Oh, the U.S. is just a huge psychological experiment."
right. So it's probably, and that's the other thing too. It's a meme. Inadvertently, it's probably not. That's not even my own original idea. I probably read that from somewhere, heard from somewhere, and now I'm just rehashing the memes. It's like it's everywhere. It's everywhere, and you know it's either the government or it's just you have or a lot of these mega corporations that are trying to profit out of one's like lower desires in order to control manipulate the masses. That could be a discussion for a whole different topic, but I just thought it was an interesting point to bring up in terms of liberalism, which is sometimes, even if we define the liberal mind as being like radically open-minded, um, there could be, and again, this also talks about. Remember the video, with the left, where the left goes too far, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, in this case, I'm going to say, where perhaps liberalism goes too far when you are like so radically open-minded and you just take in like all the toxic content in media that one consumes, and it's like how can you function and process as like a human being at that point? So
Yeah.
that's where
With
I
all the
feel like,
bombarding, it gets really hard.
yeah, it gets hard. And then so that's where I feel like I kind of, and again, I'm not, if we talk about like now the conservatives, right, that but again, I also understand that there are some conservatives that are, there's maybe some radical conservatives or radical people that swing on the other side of the pendulum too far. But the point I'm trying to get at has to do with this is something that liberals should keep in mind, is to is to be aware of the content that you're consuming, and to have your mind as a gatekeeper, right? And just to be careful, because let's be honest, a lot of us have bad habits that we're clearly aware of, because we live in an age now where like where it's very difficult nowadays to really um, be kind of an original thinker, because nowadays, how can you really be if you're always being bombarded with media, and more than likely you're pretty much copying off of the idea of someone else, even if you don't realize it consciously or unconsciously. So that's the only thing, the only argument I would say is to guard your mind well, and to use it as sort of a gatekeeper. Which the other thing, there's another point I'll mention on the bottom here, since I know we have 2 minutes left, which I don't know if I agree with again, was how the liberal loves to challenge the status quo to create progress in society, whereas conservatives want to preserve the way things are. I mean, again, that's very much generalizing. um I guess as like a counter argument, well, how do we really know whatever changes a liberal like proposes, that maybe it may create progress in society, and it may actually cause things to be worse, especially when it comes to I guess as one example, like, nah, I'm not going to bring that example, that's like too personal, but um you know what I mean, Chase. and when you have people that are like so radically like open-minded that they can get involved, in certain like habits and behaviors that could actually be destructive for them.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Right. Okay. Wow. What an interesting hour that we had. Do you have any closing thoughts, Chase, on understanding the liberal mind?
Yes, to summarize, understanding the liberal mind. So use liberal just with a grain of salt, because liberal is just one of two ideas that were just manufactured out of the creativity of the human mind. And in the human mind, we all have the ability to possess storytelling. And the liberal mind is just a very complex, big story. That's all I have to say.
Nicely put, Chase. I guess you know my my closing thoughts has to do with, okay, if you really want to truly be liberal, I would, again, if you're gonna legit challenge like the status quo, first, I guess, what was the saying? Before you try to to change the world, actually look within and change yourself. I mean, because again, if you go too far when it comes to creativity, you might just spread some chaos that may not actually go as intended, because we live in a very complex world, and you know so take care to um, have a gatekeeper of the madness that lies within. And those are my closing thoughts.
All right, well said. So I hope everyone had a great time at the podcast. I'll see you in the next one. Brandon, give us the countdown.
Absolutely. Okay. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Have a good night.